Welcome to Woosh TV. In this video we are going to talk about the top 10 most unusual punishments of human history. Before starting this video, like this video, and subscribe to Woosh TV for future updates. Cruel and unusual punishment is a phrase in common law expressing punishment that is regarded undesirable due to the suffering, agony, or humiliation it inflicts on the person subjected to the sentence. The precise definition varies by jurisdiction, but typically includes punishments that are arbitrary, unnecessary, overly severe compared to the crime, or not generally accepted in society. There is great discussion as to whether capital punishment is considered cruel and unusual. Common arguments are that capital punishment is more expensive when factoring in appeals versus life in prison, and that the government has been wrong before on death penalty cases, therefore the government could be wrong again, and the government ought not have the authority to end a life, therefore the government could be wrong again, and the government ought not have the authority to end a life. These two arguments alone may or may not qualify under the tests the government puts forth, which could also be considered arbitrary itself, especially if society is not informed enough on these considerable facts. For most of recorded history, capital punishments were typically purposely brutal and agonizing. Severe historical execution methods include the breaking wheel, hanged, drawn, and quartered, mazzello, boiling to death, death by burning, execution by drowning, death by starvation, immurement, flaying, disembowelment, crucifixion, impalement, crushing, execution by elephant, keel howling, stoning, dismemberment, sawing, slow slicing, blood eagle, bamboo torture, and necklacing. The human mind has long been capable of dreaming up new and terrible ways to punish alleged transgressors, villains, witches, and anyone else who was unlucky enough to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. We're all familiar with the classic standbys: hanging, burning, stoning. Yawn. What if someone actually wrongs you? Like stealing your sheep, or maybe must have caused a crop failure, or something because they gave you a shifty look at one time. Throughout the ages, various exceedingly unsexual techniques of torture and execution have come and gone. Here are the top 10 most unusual punishments of human history. Number 10. Keel howling. Keel howling was a method of punishment invented by the Dutch Navy in the late 16th century for sailors. Offenders were bound with rope and dragged beneath the surface of the ship from one end to the other. While many people died as a result of drowning or internal damage, the practice was not necessarily intended to be lethal. Additionally, soldiers who were subjected to keel howling were frequently viciously slashed by barnacles on the ship's bottom, keel, and bore the scars for the rest of their lives. That is, if they survived. Number 9. Boiling. Nowadays, shellfish are spared the fate of boiling alive. However, it was a frequent manner of execution centuries ago, from East Asia to England. After stripping the condemned, they were placed in a vat, or pot of boiling liquid, typically water, oil, or tar. Alternatively, for a more gruesome experience, the offender could be submerged in a chilly liquid and then brought to a boil. According to records from Henry VIII's reign, some people were cooked for up to 2 hours before succumbing. Number 8. Rat torture. Rat torture appears to have survived in the imaginations of creative types, as it was recently shown in the film Too Fast, Too Furious and the television series Game of Thrones. A hungry and/or diseased rat is placed in a bucket on the victim's exposed stomach or chest in this terrible, and, I must admit, innovative method of torture. The bucket is then heated from the outside, and the enraged rat bites its way through the unfortunate individual's flesh, and whatever organs it comes across on its way out. Ancient Rome was the birthplace of rat torture. A bucket of starving rats was connected to the individual's stomach. Following that, the bucket was heated, rendering the interior extremely hot. The terrified animal could only escape by digging through the victim's soft tummy. The procedure was refined in medieval Germany with the addition of a metal cage and hot charcoal, and was perfected during Argentina's Dirty War in the 20th century. The first known instance of rat torture dates all the way back to the 17th century in Europe. During the Dutch uprising, 𝐦𝐨𝐬𝐿 tortured captured prisoners with rats to acquire crucial information. As the Dutch would quickly discover, rat torture was an exceptionally effective means of interrogation. A victim frequently divulged everything he knew prior to the cage being filled with hot charcoal. We have recorded instances of rat torture being employed by numerous South American military dictatorships, including those in Brazil, 1964 to 1985, Uruguay, 1973 to 1985, Argentina, 1976 to 1983, and Chile, 1973 to 1990, under Auguste Pinochet's dictatorship. Number 7. Execution vans. China has developed an astonishingly efficient system of capital punishment. It's unsurprising, given that China executes the most people per year of any country on the planet. Numerous offenses, including tax evasion, arson, and prostitution, are punishable by death. Numerous executions in China are being carried out in mobile execution units, vans equipped with restraints and fatal injection chemicals. The vans, which resemble standard police vehicles, have been on the road for approximately a decade. There are dozens of them located throughout the country, delivering fatal justice closer to crime scenes. Not only are they less expensive than more traditional facilities, but they are also more merciful than the other chosen mode of execution, death by firing squad. Number 6. Gridiron. Gridirons were essentially grills for roasting human beings. As one might guess, it resembled an iron grid, and was used in conjunction with a fire or burning coals. Certain individuals were even basted with oil before broiling to achieve appropriate broiling. However, take heart, they were not consumed afterwards. Probably. The gridiron's dangers are readily apparent to anyone who has hosted a backyard barbecue. It's essentially broiling someone alive on a grate over a bed of coals. A preferred method of execution for dissidents, and those suspected of treason, it was a horrible way to die. Number 5. Drawing and quartering. This is a particularly heinous form of cruel and unusual punishment. It's still tough to believe this is a genuine occurrence, that was conceived by genuine persons and occurred to genuine sad folks. The penalty was first meted out in 13th century England. The accused was drawn by a horse and carried to the gallows, where he was usually hanged, sometimes disemboweled, or beheaded. Following that, the condemned was quartered, i.e. his body was divided into quarters, sometimes by attaching each limb to a separate horse, and forcing them to run in opposite directions. This penalty, which was reserved for those found guilty of treason, was repealed in 1867. Number 4. Strappado. Strappado is a painful kind of torture that, unlike the majority of the others on this list, does not always result in death. In strappado, the guilty party is strung up behind the head by the wrists. Although the difficult angle is almost certain to result in agonizing shoulder dislocation, if it does not, weights may be added. Number 3. White torture. While the term white torture can refer to any type of psychological torment, in general it has a more literal connotation here. White torture is a form of sensory deprivation in which the prisoner's cell, clothing, and even food are all completely white. Guards are dressed entirely in white, lights are kept on 24 hours a day, and there are no words uttered. There is no visible color. It was reported in the case of Amir Farkhravar, who was arrested and subjected to white torture for around 8 months in 2004 in his native Iran. While sensory deprivation causes less physical agony than the other tortures on this list, the psychological toll is incalculable. Farkhravar was quoted as saying that upon his release, he was no longer a regular person, and couldn't even recall the faces of his parents. Number 2. 𝐵𝐴𝐴. The sack, or 𝐵𝐴𝐴, was another strangely particular method of death. It was employed in ancient Rome to punish parricide, the intentional killing of one's parents or another close relative. The condemned was stuffed inside a leather sack together with a dog, a monkey, a snake, and a rooster. The sack was then dumped into a body of water. If the claimed killer was not killed by the animals, he was certainly killed by drowning. Number 1. Scaphism. Scaphism was one of the most bizarre and severe forms of skin-crawling torture. The Greeks described it as a Persian punishment, and if they are to be believed, those Persians were nuts. The accused was imprisoned between 2 boats, or in a hollowed-out tree trunk, and forced to drink milk and honey. That portion does not sound as horrible as it sounds. However, the milk and honey diet finally resulted in debilitating diarrhea that persisted within the wooden enclosure. The poor victim was slathered with additional milk and honey and left in the sun, or near still water, where bugs would be drawn to the filth, rot, and sweetness. Eventually, the individual would perish either from dehydration, exposure, or bite and sting wounds. What do you think about this video? Do let us know down in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear from us again, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go.